The hearing exposes troubling concerns about Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino, leading the FBI while potentially prioritizing personal loyalty over constitutional duty. Questions about polygraph loyalty tests and the handling of Jeffrey Epstein's files highlight a dangerous mix of politics and law enforcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, in addition to the extensive purge of nonpartisan career FBI official reports indicate that dozens of remaining officials have been subjected to polygraph exams to test their loyalty. My understanding is that approximately 40 officials have been asked to sit for a polygraph during your administration, and several have been asked whether they have ever made negative comments about you. Director Patel, FBI agents pledge their loyalty to the Constitution of the United States, not you personally. What is the basis for requiring polygraph exams of your workforce and asking them if they've made negative comments about you?
I don't know what reports you're referring to, Ranking Member, and I reject any reporting that has false information in it, so I'm not going to respond to that. As far as polygraphs go, generally they are always and always have been utilized at the FBI to track down those that leak sensitive information and have unauthorized disclosures to the media, and we will continue to use them to ensure the integrity of the FBI.
Did any individual on your senior executive team, the director's advisory team, or who serve in the positions on the 7th floor receive disqualifying alerts on their polygraphs?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the personnel discussions that were had on a polygraph. Those are private discussions, and many of them relate to ongoing investigations.
Did you or Attorney General Bondi provide any individual with a waiver so they could remain employed after they received disqualifying alerts on their polygraphs?
I'll have to get back to you.
You don't remember that?
No, sir. My priority is protecting the American public, not getting into the weeds of polygraphs.
And to have a decent memory when you come before a committee.
I'm happy to talk about all the good work the men and women of the FBI are doing, including provided the lowest crime rate in American history. If you want to talk about how to protect the citizens, Chicago has seen a 30% reduction in its murder rate because of the men and women of the FBI.
You take credit for that?
I'll happily do that.
You
The interagency partners and the men and women of the Chicago PD have never been more powerful.
Include local law enforcement, please.
Have you ever seen my testimony across this country where I always lead with our interagency partnerships with state and local law enforcement? It is the pillar of what I am doing. And on the 7th floor, for the first time in FBI history, I have installed police officers and sheriffs right on my 7th floor to report to us every day what's going around the country on the street level, because that is a priority of the FBI and is the only way we are going to work. I don't take credit for anything, but I will defend the men and women of the FBI and the cops that help us get it done.
You should. Director Patel, to your knowledge, did a whistleblower ever make a disclosure to Attorney General Bondi indicating that the New York field office was withholding Epstein-related records?
I'm not familiar with that whistleblower.
You know that there was such a whistleblower?
I'm not familiar with that whistleblower.
In response to the blowback she received, Attorney General Bondi also pushed the FBI to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records on an arbitrarily short deadline in March, and the FBI was directed to flag any documents that mentioned President Trump. Nothing came of that review until July, when DOJ and FBI released an unsigned memorandum stating there is no incriminating client list. Why was this July 7th memorandum unsigned?
Would you prefer I've used AutoPen?
Why was it unsigned?
The memorandum had the insignia of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And in our effort to secure transparency for the American people, because the 3 prior administrations had not done so, we conducted an exhaustive search of everything related to the Epstein cases, and we produced what was legally and permissibly able to be produced to Congress and the American public.
So
and there's a congressional subpoena, and we're continuing to do so.
Did you personally direct that investigation so that you would sign such a...
Did I personally direct what investigation?
Of the Epstein records for any reference to President Trump?
Again, you are citing reporting that I think is baseless. We conducted an investigation of the Epstein case files pursuant to the direction of the President of the administration to provide all credible information, and we are working with Congress pursuant to a congressional subpoena to turn over all the documents we can. All individuals.
Who at DOJ and FBI was responsible for its drafting and conclusions?
Many individuals at the Department of Justice and the FBI are responsible.
There was no lead person?
The Attorney General leads the Department of Justice and I lead the FBI.
So the Attorney General was responsible for that?
The Attorney General leads the Department of Justice.
Director Patel, much like you, Deputy Director Dan Bongino was a conspiracy theorist who built a lucrative career making inflammatory and unsubstantiated statements about the FBI that would be disqualifying in any administration that cared about nonpartisan law enforcement. For instance, Mr. Bongino called the placement of pipe bombs outside the DNC and RNC headquarters on January 6, quote, an inside job, and went on to say this was a setup. I have zero doubt, and whoever goes into the FBI, you better get an answer about why. Director Patel, you and Deputy Director Bongino are now leading the FBI. What is the evidence to suggest the pipe bombs placed outside of the DNC and RNC on January 6 were an inside job?
I appreciate the opportunity to discuss Director Bongino's mind record. So many on this committee and the media jettison our 31 years of public service.
Can you answer the question, sir?
I'm answering the question. You're questioning the integrity of the Deputy Director of the FBI and mine.
If you found any
and I'm going to
evidence.
answer the question.
I'm
The pipe
asking-
bomb investigation is ongoing, and I'm not going to discuss
Ongoing?
the details of the pipe bomb investigation. Mr. Bongino was a Secret Service agent for 15 years, a police officer for 5. I served this country in multiple administrations for 16 years. We were also private citizens, and we are now back in government service. And what we have the ability to do is set aside our personal beliefs to deliver the mission of justice for this country, and we're doing it day in and day out. And I find it disgusting that everyone and anyone would jettison our 31 years of combined experience that is now at the helm of the FBI, delivering historic results at historic speeds for the American people.
The Senate exchange regarding Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino leading the FBI raises profound concerns about the politicization of federal law enforcement and the erosion of institutional integrity. At the center of this hearing is a clear tension between the mission of the FBI to serve the Constitution and the American public, and the apparent efforts to prioritize loyalty to political leadership over professional, nonpartisan judgment. The repeated questioning about polygraph exams, particularly the targeting of career officials regarding negative comments about Patel, signals a chilling message. Independent voices within the Bureau may be pressured or punished simply for doing their jobs. In a healthy democracy, law enforcement officials owe their allegiance to the rule of law, not to any individual in power. Yet, the testimony suggests that the culture within the FBI may have shifted toward personal loyalty tests, a practice that undermines decades of institutional trust and expertise. Equally troubling is the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. The hearing highlights the irregularities in how these sensitive records were reviewed, flagged for mentions of President Trump, and ultimately released via an unsigned DOJ memorandum. While Patel emphasizes compliance with congressional subpoenas and the public release of what was legally permissible, the lack of clarity around investigative discretion raises serious questions about whether political considerations influenced the review process. When career investigators and whistleblowers are sidelined, and oversight is deflected with vague references to procedural limits, public confidence in the impartiality of justice is compromised. For progressive observers, this scenario demonstrates the dangers of consolidating investigatory power in politically motivated leadership, where transparency may exist in form, but not in substance. The involvement of Dan Bongino as deputy director further compounds these concerns. Bongino's history as a conspiracy theorist, including claims that pipe bombs at the DNC and RNC were an inside job, raises questions about judgment, credibility, and the prioritization of evidence-based investigations. Leadership positions within law enforcement require adherence to facts, impartiality, and professional ethics. Promoting individuals with a record of inflammatory and unsubstantiated statements signals a troubling departure from these standards. The joint leadership of Patel and Bongino risks creating an environment in which ideology and loyalty outweigh expertise, thereby weakening operational effectiveness in critical areas, such as counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and major criminal investigations. The broader implications of this hearing are systemic. When career FBI officials are subjected to loyalty polygraphs, targeted for perceived disloyalty, or overridden in their handling of politically sensitive files, the institution's ability to function independently is eroded. This culture not only threatens the FBI's credibility, but also endangers national security and public safety by removing experienced professionals from positions where their expertise is most needed. The emphasis on political allegiance over professional qualifications sends a chilling signal to career employees, discouraging principled action and reinforcing the perception that justice can be manipulated for partisan objectives. Progressive critique emphasizes that the health of democratic institutions depends on protecting the independence of career professionals and ensuring that political appointees cannot weaponize law enforcement for personal or partisan ends. Finally, the handling of the Epstein files, particularly the limited release of records and the refusal to engage fully with questions about investigative discretion, underscores the persistent tension between transparency, accountability, and political influence. By deflecting responsibility to the Attorney General or citing procedural norms while avoiding substantive explanations, Patel's testimony highlights the gap between formal compliance and meaningful accountability. For the public, especially victims of crimes like those associated with Epstein, the perception that political considerations may shape investigatory priorities diminishes trust and undermines the legitimacy of the justice system. Upholding constitutional obligations, ensuring independent review, and protecting whistleblowers are essential to restoring faith in federal law enforcement. This hearing, therefore, is more than an examination of individual leaders. It is a stark reminder that the integrity of the FBI, and by extension American democracy, relies on insulating law enforcement from political interference, valuing evidence over ideology, and ensuring that loyalty to the Constitution always comes before loyalty to any one person.